Chelsea, obviously a massive week. They qualified for the Champions League. They win the Conference League. And I want to make sure the viewers know this. Ben, who's on the show, has now dropped one of his Jacob's crackers yesterday and broke the news before anybody else that Delap was choosing Chelsea. They are in talks, of course, and it's been fairly well documented that they're going to be looking for another striker. I suppose Chelsea fans would like to know, with Delap coming in, will it be a similar profile, a different type of player, an older individual? Delap's done. What's next for Chelsea in the transfer window, Ben?
By the way, I love the fact now when I break anything, I'm getting a Jacob's cracker, a Ben banger, and I know that they're viewers of this show because we've only ever mentioned it in one place, and therefore anyone commenting on X or elsewhere, I know that you've obviously seen this show, which is great. And we've had a few, haven't we? The Cunha one was my exclusive, both the agreement of a 5-year contract and the original interest, the Man United and Mbuemo one, the Delap one. So, and I say this very warmly to the chat because I always appreciate the honesty and the engagement. But when Lyle says Ban Jacobs is like a 5th-tier journo, fine, you're entitled to that opinion, but at least spell my name right. B-E-N, not B-A-N, and Jacobs with an S, not an apostrophe S. So maybe Ban Jacobs is a 5th-tier journalist, but Ben Jacobs at least is up to 4th tier after my recent Delap exclusives. That's all I'm going to say.
You've had that promotion. You've had that promotion to at least fourth tier.
But to be honest, I like it because the whole point of this is we have to have some fun with it and everyone's entitled to their opinions. So I appreciate all of the comments and the engagement. I'll always do my best to answer your questions and engage with you. So with Chelsea, look, Delap is the one they wanted. He was the number one choice. And as I revealed 2 days ago, Chelsea agreed terms and now have triggered the 30 million release clause. And this was kind of a waiting game because Delap went on a little bit of a merry-go-round tour. He met with Man United, Chelsea, Newcastle and Everton. And the two front runners were seen as Chelsea and Manchester United. Manchester United felt in a strong position if they won the Europa League final because they believed that Delap felt not only he wanted to move back to the Northwest, but also he would be starting every week at that football club. Now, without European football, Chelsea were able to move ahead. Manchester United had one secret weapon in Jason Wilcox, who knows Delap very well. Chelsea had two in Joe Shields and Enzo Maresca. But at the end of the day, European football is very important to Delap. And a lot of Manchester United fans say to me, why would Cunha agree to a long-term project and just throw himself straight into the football club and do so before the Europa League final? And someone so young like Delap would insist on European football. And the answer is simple. Next season is really important to Delap to play European football because Thomas Tuchel has said, if you're playing regular European or in Chelsea's case now Champions League football, you stand the strongest possible chance of making the 2026 World Cup squad. So Delap is thinking quite short term because he doesn't want to miss out on the World Cup next summer. In addition to that, we now have an interesting dynamic where Chelsea have a Club World Cup, but Delap wants to go and play at the under-21 Euros, again, to boost his England chances. And we'll have to kind of wait and see how that one pans out. But I think the Delap side would rather go to the under-21 Euros and then join up later with Chelsea for the second half of the Club World Cup. But Chelsea, of course, own the player once it's formalised. So it will be their decision. And the under-21 Euros does not fall in an international break, which means Chelsea would have, in theory, the power to prevent Delap from going to the under-21 Euros. So that one is done. Then, as you allude to, we're hearing a lot of reports about Chelsea speaking to other strikers. There is a possibility that Chelsea bring in another striker, but I don't feel they're in that much urgency to do so because they still rate Nicholas Jackson. So we're going to have to understand whether or not another name is likely. And if so, that definitely puts a question mark over the future of Nicholas Jackson. But Enzo Maresca has spoken very positively about Jackson and his influence. So I think the jury's still out on whether Chelsea definitively add a second striker. We know they like Victor Gyökeres, Hugo Ekitike, who's also a Liverpool target. They've looked at Benjamin Sesko. It looks like Arsenal are the ones advancing there. So let's see whether Chelsea put budget on another striker. But after Delap, the top priority next for Chelsea is to find a right-footed left winger, and that will be what I expect them to work on between now and when the Club World Cup starts.
And who are the targets they're looking at? I mean, we'll get back to striker in a minute. Who are the targets that you see Chelsea moving towards on that left-hand side? Because we've heard Rodrigo's name in recent days from some sources. Who are the players you think they're likely to target and talk to, Ben?
Rodrigo is kind of more of a market opportunity, as I revealed a month ago, a name being looked at by 2 or 3 Premier League clubs. Chelsea have not advanced anything with Rodrigo, but involved in this potential exit from Real Madrid is Ali Barrett, who has a very close relationship with Chelsea. And therefore, should Rodrigo become genuinely available, Chelsea will feel well positioned. But at this stage, they're not moving for Rodrigo. I think Arsenal are probably the most concrete interest from the Premier League, but there's been no bids yet. But my understanding with Rodrigo is that Real Madrid will sanction an exit for 90 million euros. And the advantage of Rodrigo is that those clubs looking for a left-sided player also get a winger very capable of playing on the right-hand side, because that's where he's been forced to play for Real Madrid, because obviously at Madrid on the left side is Vini Jr. and Mbappe. And therefore, signing Rodrigo for Arsenal gives you a left-sided player, but if Saka gets injured, you've got cover on the right side along with Ranieri. From Chelsea's point of view, if Jadon Sancho, that we can maybe talk about in a minute, was to be returned to Manchester United, and if Mykhailo Mudryk ends up being permanently banned, you bring in a left-sided player. But if you want to move him over to the right-hand side, you have that option. It's the same really with Pedro Neto. He can play on the right or the left and lead the line for Chelsea. So the versatility and the talent of Rodrigo is not going unnoticed because he's a market opportunity, but no bid yet. And there's certainly nothing advanced or bubbling yet between Chelsea and Rodrigo, other than internal knowledge that this is a player that might become available in the coming weeks. More concrete targets for Chelsea on the left. Jamie Gittins, the cheapest, and Chelsea really like the player. Alejandro Garnacho, who Chelsea explored in January, along with Napoli. Manchester United still insists that they want 60 million quid or more for Garnacho, but I'm told there will be some flexibility there. So Garnacho might become a market opportunity because the value kind of goes down, doesn't it? The same with Rashford, as soon as the club are basically driving him out of the club. And then Nico Williams is the most exciting profile for many clubs, particularly Chelsea and Arsenal. But despite the fact the release clause is definitely market value, the agent fees and the wages make that a very expensive deal. So we're going to have to understand whether any club feels Williams is worth the overall outlay. The wage would be at least £250,000 a week plus bonuses. And the other thing with Nico Williams is that, a bit like Zubimendi, he's in love with Athletic Bilbao. So this isn't just about triggering a 58 million euros release clause. This is also about, can you persuade Williams to finally leave Athletic Bilbao? And there's a very strong chance, even if somebody triggered the clause, that Williams, who is well paid at Athletic Bilbao, decides to stay for another season. So you've got Chelsea and Arsenal there. And in addition to that, Barcelona, in theory, dream of Nico Williams to reunite him with his international teammate Lamine Yamal. But it's difficult to see how they'll be able to afford that deal.
Yeah, some interesting times. And I want to pick up on one thing you said just so I can get clarity and our viewers. So when you said about Delap being the number one choice, a lot of Chelsea fans have been on our shows in the comment sections are saying that he's kind of the young option. Chelsea are looking for a bigger and better player for him to maybe play backup to. Is that not your understanding? Your understanding is Delap is going to be most likely to be the centerpiece of Chelsea's attack next season.
Yeah, I think it's not lost on Chelsea, though, that Nicholas Jackson got sent off against Newcastle. They finished the season in the Premier League without a defined number 9. And on deadline day in January, both Jackson and Mark Gahey got injuries against West Ham, and they played much of the second half of the season without a defined striker. So it'd be logical for Chelsea to think they might want to overstock in that position, especially because Mark Gahey could go on loan to Ipswich Town. There's concrete interest there. It's separate to the Delap deal, but there's a realistic possibility that he goes. So then with Delap, even if Jackson stays, Chelsea may feel one other forward would be very welcome. But where you have a challenge is if you've pitched to Delap you're going to get minutes and boost your England chances. If you're pitching to Jackson, you're going to stay and you're going to get minutes. Then were they to enter the conversation in a formal sense for Hugo Ekitike or Victor Gyökeres, it's obvious that kind of name would expect to be the lead striker as well. So it's a balancing act. And at this stage, we'll have to wait and see what Chelsea do, because Enzo Maresca's system will only lean towards one lead striker. And as a consequence, they are going to have to be careful not to overstock and give Enzo Maresca too many headaches. We're hearing reports in Germany that Chelsea are still proceeding with Hugo Ekitike. That's not quite my understanding. Ekitike is a target for sure. But now that Delap's arrived, I think Chelsea might just put the brakes on for a day or two and work out exactly what they think they need. And then if it transpires an Ekitike or a Gyökeres or a Šeško is bid for, that may be a clue that Nicholas Jackson does become available on the market. Because although it's only my personal opinion, I think logically, if you look at the profiles, Jackson, Delap, and one of the other names, that's 3 established strikers that will all want to play week in, week out. Only one of them can start. One of them may be prepared to be a bit more bit part, but I think having 2 of them on the bench would be a little bit too much to handle. And Delap is value, but adding a Ekitike at 100 million or a Gyökeres at 70 million, big outlays unless they're going to play every week.
Well, this is exactly it. And I'm not trying to burst any Chelsea fans' bubble. You may end up with 2. I'm just trying to, as a fan, we're trying to understand, as a fan of football, trying to understand if Delap's gone there because he's going to be the main man, and then you drop 70 million on Ekitike, 70, 80 million on Gyökeres, paid them the salary thereafter. They, with a 1 striker system, and you're not in the Conference League this year, you both can't be the main man. And I think that that's the interesting sort of dichotomy in this conversation.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. And obviously, this is what Chelsea are thinking at the moment. Do we need one more? Is Delap just a market opportunity because of an incredibly low 30 million release clause? Enzo Maresca knows him well. You've still saved a little bit of budget to move forwards with another name. I'm not ruling that out at this stage, but I think Chelsea wanted Delap. And of all the names, they wanted to get that one over the line. They've done that, so they can now relax a little bit. And my understanding is there's a lot of games going on in Germany at the moment, because remember, with Ekitike, Frankfurt want 100 million euros. So we're hearing constantly Chelsea are pushing, when actually I think Liverpool are there. And it's very easy for Frankfurt to try and pit Chelsea against Liverpool to get maximum valuation. And it may be true that they both end up entering that race, but it's certainly in the interest of Frankfurt to fuel a bidding war. And I think that's what's happening at the moment. And we may hear a lot about Chelsea and Ekitike, and I'm certainly not entirely pouring cold water over it. Yes. But I think Liverpool will be there for Ekitike as well. I think Arsenal will pick between Šeško and Gyökeres, and it seems like they're currently advancing on Šeško. So where's Gyökeres going to go? Because the feeling has always been Premier League is his most likely destination. You've got Juventus, you've got PSG. There's even some Saudi interest in him as well. But we're basically seeing the domino effect. And I think I said on the show 2 weeks ago that once the first striker went, everything else will become clearer. So Delap goes to Chelsea. Man U need a new target. Can they find a way to bid for Gyökeres? We'll have to wait and see. If Arsenal bid for Šeško, it means Gyökeres is not going there. So maybe Manchester United feel a bit more encouraged, but they've still got to find the money. Newcastle think they're going to keep hold of Alexander Isak, Callum Wilson. They may extend for another year, but are they going to try and sign a young striker as well? So we're starting to see things fall into place. But remember to look at these races outside of only the Premier League, because Juventus want a striker. PSG want a striker. Milan want a striker, even though they've not got any Champions League football. Saudi want several strikers. Al Hilal are going to sign a forward. Al Ittihad are going to sign a forward. Neom and Qadsiya are both going to sign forwards. So I think now we're just starting to see the dominoes fall into place. But right now, because Delap is expected to be done, Chelsea's number one priority is not to go and quickly add another striker, even though, of course, the window's open and they could. It's to bring in that left winger.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of that makes sense, that the domino effect, as you mentioned. Moving